Okay, welcome. Good evening, good day, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Where is my phone? There is my phone. So, obviously, the last live stream was a couple of days ago, and we hit the 700 subscriber mark. We've well gone past that now. We've pushing 725. Lots of growth on the channel in the last few days. Massive growth on the channel actually in the last few days. Now, thank you to everyone who has recently subscribed. Really appreciate all the subscriptions. For whatever reason why you're here, this is a sports channel predominantly, although we have done a few non-sporting videos on the channel in the past. It started off as a personal blog channel, and then it evolved into sport. Then we whacked in some unseasonal snow in there and a few other bits and pieces, some film reviews. The other channel, the History Buff, and I think I'm going to get rid of that. No one really watches it anymore. But let's get on to what we want to discuss this evening. Several things. One, the FA is under fire for allowing betting companies to show FA Cup games over the weekend. The British government's not very happy with that. It's through a holding company called IMG, who sell the media rights. So the FA under real pressure to basically get out of that contract. Obviously, rugby league stories like James Maloney coming to the Super League, John Sonny Bill Williams coming to the Super League, and Gareth Widdop coming to the Super League. Some big rugby league names there. And a few other bits and pieces that we can discuss. Questions. BDO darts going down the toilet. They've left Lakeside. They're going to the O2. Crowd numbers are really down. Prize money's down. And the BDO darts organisation's in a bit of a mess. And there's a few other bits and pieces in there. Yes, hello there. Being a Canadians fan, Montreal Canadiens fan, is not fun. Since the beginning of December, I think they're one of the worst teams in the league for their form. Another long losing streak. I don't know what to say really about the Montreal Canadiens. They are in a bit of a mess. And there's been a lot of debate about the contract they gave Carey Price a couple of years ago. Big contract, real big money. And with a salary cap era, that doesn't leave a lot of movement really to offload or bring players in because of the salary cap being also a few $1 million lower than expected. It does make it difficult to bring players in or ship players out. It's not fun being a Montreal Canadiens fan, and Carey Price's numbers aren't looking great. They're well below the league average right now. They're not great, and he hasn't got a backup who's there long enough, who can actually take enough starts to relieve Carey Price of a bit of pressure. I think they're overplaying him as well. I only have a little Honda 125, nothing special. I actually have several helmets lying around the flat. This is my this is actually quite an interesting helmet because it's a Rossi design from 1998 at Imola. I think it was the 250 Grand Prix MotoGP 250 Championship, and he wore this at Imola in '98. This design, so it's an old design, but I got that helmet. I'm gonna say 2.5 years ago I got that helmet. My Marco Simoncelli is over there, and then my standard AGVs are there. Basically, the only reason why I wear AGV helmets is they're the only bloody things that fit my head. Ironically, I've tried buying other helmets for motorcycles, and that is the one that actually fits the best. Is AGV. So there you go. I do think yes. The defense, the Montreal Canadiens defense, Shea Weber is getting old. Ben Sherratt scored 2 goals against our Winnipeg Jets, which is just, why did we let him go? I have no idea. He's, I think, the most improved player over the last few years in the NHL defensively. Of all the defensemen who've put in the hard minutes and the hard shifts and don't get a lot of credit. I think that's a very good pickup on free agency, but he's a defensive defenseman. The fact he's putting up career numbers is a positive, but when Shea Weber has missed a lot of time himself through injury, Mete is young. It does raise some concerns. I think Petrie is the only other defender you really have who's experienced, who can be defensively sound, but you also need to have goal scoring coming from your defense as well. And if Ben Sherratt is your top scoring defenseman right now, and Mete is starting to be consistent, that's a concern when you're relying on defensive defensemen to assist in your scoring. Great. So that's great. The best defenseman you've had all season, who's a new signing this season, is now injured. And he's actually been very consistent, I would say, the last 4 or 5 years with the Jets. He hasn't missed a lot of game time. I think he's played every single playoff game we've had since 2015. Very consistent player, much improved player. That is concerning that if a player who is showing career numbers in back-to-back years, so last year he had really good numbers, and that's why we couldn't afford to re-sign him. This year he's on a pace to beat those numbers. He's creating a lot of assists. He's getting goals, 2 goals against the Jets in his, the other day. That's his first 2-goal game, I believe, as well. I think that would, I think that is concerning. But at the same time, it's the way Montreal set up. There's been a lot of discussion on TSN, so if you watch TSN, about how the Montreal Canadiens have spent so much money on the goaltender. When you're spending 1/8 of your salary cap on one player and it's your goaltender and he's injury prone, that is a massive, massive problem. And they haven't got an out-and-out goal scorer. And Gallagher, while he may be coming back at some point, whether he is back for this game or not, he's missed a fair bit of game time. He's had a concussion. Drouin is still missing. I don't know if Montreal are going to be able to get a wild card spot. They're going to have to do something like the St. Louis Blues. The Blues last season. Just go on a massive run and basically play playoff hockey for 3 months. And I just don't see it with the team they have. They do not have the team in place who can score enough goals to do that. And they haven't got a goaltender who is stopping the puck enough to do that. So I don't know. As a Jets fan, I have my own concerns about my team. And we are in a playoff spot by a wild card because the Central is a better division than the Pacific. But I have to say, I mean, the fact that Kovalchuk, who is a veteran player, who can score a point a game if he feels like it. This is the problem. He's not the player he was 10 years ago. He has spent time in the KHL. He has definitely lost a step, and it didn't work out at LA. So if you're relying on a player who's signed for league minimum, who cleared waivers for buyout, as your current informed player, you are in trouble. Absolutely in trouble. Would I have a motor? I do actually have a helmet collection. That's only one of them. I have a fair few, but one's in its case at the moment, and one's drying off. So the only one of view is my Rossi from '98. But I think, yeah, I would definitely, if I had the money, collect cars and bikes. If I won the lottery tomorrow, I would definitely collect more than what I'm collecting now. I think my jersey collection could use adding to, but collecting things is expensive, very expensive, and sports memorabilia can be really expensive. So to find a good, how do I put it? To find cheap but really good quality sports memorabilia is really difficult. And then if you have motorcycles and cars, I mean, they can go for tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds or dollars or euros. They can get really expensive, and so you need to have a fair bit of disposable income to collect those kind of things. On the NHL side of things, obviously we have the debate about the All-Star game and the amount of players who've publicly come out and say they don't want to play in the All-Star week, and they get a suspension, and it's up to the team to choose whether they get suspended before the All-Star game or after. So Ovechkin, 2 years in a row now, has said, I don't want to play. Other players have come out and said, please don't vote for me in the All-Star voting. Dylan Larkin, for example. A lot of these players, if they stay fit and healthy, play an 82-game season, roughly maybe 70, 80 games a season. They might have the odd rest night, the odd scratch here or there. Plus, if they get to playoffs, you're looking at a roughly 90 to 100 games in 9 months, something like that, 6 months. Plus, then, if your team misses the playoffs or goes out in the first round, World Championships, that's a lot of hockey. That's a lot of mileage these guys are putting on their bodies. The All-Star game in the NHL has been criticised for a while. Players, they could do it in a different way. They could have it before the season starts or just after the season's ended, like an All-Star kind of event where the best players of that season go. But now they're doing it like one player from each team has to go. A player from each team has to go to the All-Star game, which some teams like Detroit are generally bad. They're not really playing very well, these players. I don't know. I think the NHL All Star Weekend is coming for a lot of criticism at the moment. It's aimed at families and kids, really, but most hockey fans don't really feel much for it. The players certainly don't. If the players are not really interested in playing it, it's something. I don't know. The Juleson situation, I haven't heard much. I don't follow the Canadians religiously. I don't really follow teams apart from the Coyotes and the Jets really religiously. He got concussed last year very early on in a game, was put on injured reserve, and they were assessing the situation. There was no time frame on his return. I think there's a little bit more to this than a concussion. This may have triggered something like epilepsy, vertigo. He could be suffering from basically what's classed as vertigo. So the fact that at the moment he's in this situation is unfortunate. I've had a few friends who've suffered from vertigo. I've had an inner ear infection where my cochlea, which is the big part of your inner ear, basically almost ruptured itself. It was so infected, it was basically ruptured. I couldn't do anything for about a year. I was seriously ill when I was at school, so I was a year behind a lot of my friends basically in sport and lessons. I couldn't stand up for long periods. So I was throwing up and all sorts. That sounds to me like vertigo symptoms, whereby he's clearly the blow to his head, the concussion he's had has clearly affected his balance and damaged his inner ear. Possibly could have a internal issue with his balance and inner ear, because that just sounds like vertigo or meningitis symptoms, ironically. It is unfortunate. Clearly, the head injuries are it's still, when it comes to diagnosing and treating injuries like this, it's still, like, ironically, in its infancy. With all the technology we have and all the advancement in science, head injuries are like the worst to recover from. Neurologists are still discovering new things about the human brain, the human nervous system, how the body works. And the thing is, it's not been widely reported he's struggling with these problems. Obviously, the local media in Montreal and Quebec, or websites like TSN that would actually have a reporter that following the Montreal Canadiens, obviously are reporting it, but it's until he's officially retired and has an official long-term prognosis, we don't know what's going to happen. But I think he is, from the sounds of it, it's been over a year. It's safe to say he's retired. The sad thing is he also hasn't played more than 80 games in the NHL, which means he will not get an NHL pension. This is something I was discussing with a work colleague today, is actually things like the NHL and rugby league and rugby union and other contact sports. It's the post-retirement aftercare. It's when players have to retire very, very young. And their careers are very, very short because of injury. It's not just concussion. It could be a variety of issues. It could be health related, like I forget the player's name who has cancer, who's a Philadelphia Flyer. He may never play again. He may recover from the illness. He may never play again. And this is the interesting thing. Player welfare post-retirement in a variety of sports, or athlete welfare, is shocking. It's not great. They're normally left to their own devices when they retire. And we've seen it time and time again where players are destitute. They end up with huge medical bills. They struggle to readjust, not going to training every day, not playing every day. Not being around that team environment, that regimented environment. When they're left to their own devices, they really struggle. And it's post-retirement. I think professional sports leagues need to do more to look after their athletes. Not all of them get jobs in the media. Not all of them get jobs in coaching. Not all of them become scouts or club representatives, administrators. Very few of them actually stay in, percentage-wise, very few stay in the sport. A lot of them give it up for good. Paul Carrier is one who turned his back on hockey for the better part of a decade and a half after retirement, ironically due to concussion. And it is an issue that's ongoing, and it's part of the CTE lawsuit. It's more than just head injuries. It's all injuries. It's player welfare. It's making sure that when players are injured, they're not rushed back. That they're given time to heal up. that they are given time to rehabilitate from their injuries. So this Noah Jolson's, he may play again. They may find out what is causing these dizzy spells and basically vertigo symptoms. But it is really, really unfortunate that a player at his stage in his career, very young, clearly talented because he's made it to the NHL, he's been drafted, he's played an NHL game or two, ends up in this situation. But I think Adin Hill, I mean, he's played a few games last season. I think when you've got Antti Ranta and Darcy Kemper as your starting tandem, and they're pretty good, not going to lie. I mean, Darcy Kemper's had a few injuries lately, but they're pretty good. I'm not going to lie there. They're pretty good. And that's an understatement. They're two of the better goalies as a tandem right now in the league. There's a reason why Arizona are top in their division. There's a reason why their save percentages are pretty good. At some point, I do think he's going to get more game time. Antti Ranta does suffer from injuries a lot more than Darcy Kemper. Darcy Kemper is a pretty solid goaltender. Antti Ranta is pretty solid when he's fit. And unfortunately, he's had a few injury issues himself. Adin Hill, it's going to be interesting. Comrie was put on waivers by the Jets, ended up at Arizona, vice versa. He got bounced around. Clearly, Adin Hill was the best out of the AHL and ECHL goalies that Arizona have in their system. He's played games in the NHL. I think he could possibly be trade bait. If you've got Darcy Kemper and Antti Ranta, pretty solid tandem. Maybe there is, possibly on possibility of a trade. There will be teams looking for a good solid young prospect goaltender, but they do take longer to develop. So I think give him time, and then give him the odd start when Kemper or Ranta need a rest. We'll see what happens. What else have we got here? They need an NHL team back in Georgia. They've tried twice. They're not going to go a third time. They've tried twice. The original, the Calgary Flames were the Atlanta Flames in the 70s. There's a reason why they moved to Calgary, and the Atlanta Thrashers are now obviously the Winnipeg Jets. There's a reason why the NHL doesn't want to go back to Atlanta, Georgia. Yes, it's the MLS team has got fabulous support and has done very, very well so far. But and the Falcons get good support as well. But there is a reason why the NHL did not work in that location, and they're different reasons, but I don't think the NHL wants to go back there. And considering that they've got Seattle joining, it balances out the league, it balances out the divisions and the conferences. I think the NHL may stop at 32, but they haven't said they will. And there is the possibility the league could grow past 32 teams, which I don't think is going to be possible somehow. Because if the NFL and the NBA are sticking to 32, I honestly think, the NHL will stick to 32 as well. It just balances things out. It makes things less complicated. But yeah, they have tried, twice, and it didn't work both times. And what makes it more interesting is the Thrashers were that bad. They made the playoffs once, never won a playoff game. So the Thrashers had one good season out of 12 or 11 or whatever it was. They were not a successful team. They were badly managed, badly run, no direction, chaotic franchise. What we have with the Jets right now, the franchise now, is a well-run franchise. That's clearly a playoff team that has some good talent depth, and I don't know. I don't know why. I mean, the first time it didn't work, but a lot of teams moved in the 70s and the 80s. Because the Flames moved to Calgary doesn't necessarily mean they were a bad team. They were an average team. They were solid, average. But a lot of teams were moved. The Thrashers were the last team to relocate. The NHL, after the mid-90s, was very, very wary of relocating teams. They were in the latest expansion era. They were very, very wary of moving teams. They had a lot of instability in the 60s and 70s and 80s with teams moving left, right, and centre, franchises failing miserably, merging, failing, whatever. They were very, very wary of. They were determined to make it work down there, and it didn't. And they kept throwing good money after bad, and it got to the point where they didn't have an arena lease, and they had to go somewhere. And Winnipeg came through and said, "Look, we have an ownership team, we have a ready arena, we are a hockey city." We've been in an NHL city before. We'll take the team back. We'll have the Jets again, and they did. There you go. And actually, the team has been a pretty solid team since then. It did take a while to get back into the playoffs, but they've had a conference final. They've got a good solid roster. They beat the Maple Leafs last night. Get it. It didn't work in Atlanta for a variety of reasons. The second time it was an absolute disaster. It left a bad image for the league and left a bad taste in the mouth because under Gary Bettman as commissioner, there's been a big drive to grow the game in non-traditional locations. Hence why we have Vegas. Hence why we have Arizona. Hence why we have Florida and Tampa. This is the drive to the south of the US, and especially really non-traditional areas. And unfortunately, Florida doesn't draw fans very well at all. But they have a stable franchise. Tampa's won the Stanley Cup. Dallas has won the Stanley Cup, even though they're a relocation team. I don't know. I don't know why it didn't. I mean, they could really market it, but there's no national TV deal in the US. That's part of the problem. The other sports have that. And Seattle is the next team coming in. It takes a while for this process to work. It's taking, I think, up to 4 years for the Seattle process from application to getting a team working. And the issues with an arena long term is Atlanta's well off the table. Quebec is probably, or Houston are probably more likely to get a team. Eric Comrie, well, I feel sorry for the poor guy because he's moved around a lot. Been waived a couple of times. Oh, who's this? Who is this? Oh, I've got to answer this. Damn it. Hello. I'm currently very, very busy. Could you talk in about half an hour, 40 minutes? Basically, the letting agent came over. I now have a smoke alarm. Yes, I think Councilman's really got their dander up because they bought me a smoke alarm. And they did me a flat inspection. They've had a look at the pipe. I've got a smoke alarm. I don't have a definite time frame. The plumber hasn't contacted me about the leaks. I don't know about Martin downstairs having spoken to the council guy. I left him the details. I told him to get hold of him as soon as possible. The lock on the door and the wardrobe, I haven't been given a time frame. I've told them I've got a holiday in February. I've got a week off. But apart from that, I don't know. But I'm currently doing YouTube things, so yeah. But basically, that's the update. I'll talk to you tomorrow. All right. Okay. Bye. Bye. Okay. Sorry about that. We had a few legal things to sort out with my flat. There's a few issues going on. Plumbers and door locks and locksmiths and leaks and fire alarms. No, that was my mum. My mum has phoned me, not my girlfriend. My girlfriend left me. I don't have a girlfriend. The Tom Brady thing, possibly leaving the Patriots. Right, let's get back to sport because that's now going to be broadcast to the internet. The fact that my mum was on the phone. Yeah, Tom Brady. Well, look, he's 42, 43. He's getting old. Quite old. He may be one of the most successful quarterbacks in history. He may have played in one of the best winning franchises in history. He's old. And he's lost a step or two. I don't know. I don't think Tom Brady works at another team. I haven't followed the NFL at all this year. I'm kind of glad I didn't, to be fair. I've got to a point now with the NFL where I think the London series has served its purpose. I think the debate about are we going to have a team in London, I think that's not going to happen. I think I did a video last year about that very topic. Will the NFL have a team in London? I think Tom Brady, look, it's rumor at the moment that he's on the way out until a statement is released saying that he's retired or he's moved on, he's a free agent. Then this is what I don't like about the sports media is all the rumor mill articles, which are literally just clickbait. If you look at if you look at the sports media, be it TV, internet, radio, podcast, topics like this, the possibility of a player retiring and moving on is just clickbait, so you buy into their product. I think it is time for the Patriots to move on and start a new era, because Brady's been there so long. It's going to be an adjustment for whoever comes in. I don't think he will fit into another team, though. This is the thing. He's played the Patriots system for 20 years. 20 years. He's played that system. And other teams have different systems. And Brady, all he's got to do is take one massive, massive crunching hit and he's done. He's 40s. He's not a spring chicken. It's not if he rushes the ball, he's not going to outrun him. The Cleveland Browns, a team that can't win, great with an overage, really post-retirement age quarterback. That's just a recipe for a film. Look, I've seen every single one of Brady's Super Bowl wins. There is no denying that stats on paper and the amount of Super Bowl rings he has, he is the greatest quarterback of the modern era, if not of all time. When it comes to wins, when it comes to actually personality, playing the whole product, no, he's not. But I don't follow the NFL close enough to comment on where Brady goes, offensive, defensive, all these coordinators, things like that. People who've worked at the Patriots. What I will say is this: when you have a player who's very dominant in their position, when you have a team who doesn't matter what sport, okay, whose ethos is based around that player, he's the franchise guy, he's the team guy, he's the face of the franchise, the team. He's the guy you sell the product to the people. Okay, for that long, he's clearly played a system. Other teams have different systems and different philosophies and different, projections. Not only does Brady, he's lost Gronkowski as a teammate. That I think is another topic. This is why the Patriots really are hated by a lot of American football fans. Even those who are neutral watching the Super Bowl going, I don't want the Patriots to win. I want the other team to win. I think the Cleveland Browns, I will say this, have had no stability and no direction for years. They've been hopeless for decades. They really are a hopeless organisation. I don't think adding an aging Tom Brady to that organisation is going to get them over the hump. They need a complete and utter rethink about how the organisation's run. Do I think Brady's championships and the team's championships are overshadowed? Are not as impressive? Absolutely. I think this is the dividing of opinion. It doesn't matter that they've won Super Bowls and lost Super Bowls and got to the final and got to the Super Bowl, and the amount of appearances they've had as an organisation since Brady has been quarterback. What you have to look at, and I'm going to say this quite calmly, is the amount of controversy surrounding the team and the team owner as well. Don't forget Mr. Kraft getting caught in that undercover police sting operation, and the fact that they have been caught Deflategate, Spygate, other scandal. They're not popular winners. They're not a popular franchise within American football. I think they do undermine the success the team has had, and it makes you question, how they got there. It does. But you could say the same about. I think you could say the same about the 1980s Edmonton Oilers, Calgary Flames, the 90s Detroit Red Wings. There was always the rumor mill about substance abuse. It turns out the entire NHL from the 70s through till now has had a substance abuse problem. I think Bob Probert, I think, and Grant Fuhr really blew the lid off that one with their off-ice antics. Does that undermine the Oilers and the Red Wings and the Flames and the other great and the Penguins? All their achievements from the 80s through to the modern day, or is it a sport that has an issue? The FBI should hire the Patriots to spy on Iran. No, because the FBI can only spy on internal citizens. It's the CIA that should hire the Patriots. Look, to be fair, the situation between politically between the USA and Iran is worrying for all concerned. And I'd rather not debate that on this channel. I think that's a debate for the other channel. The NFL does have some pretty bad officiating. I'm going to agree on that. I have that's a concern. Is the level of officiating gets brought up a lot. We've seen John Tortorella in the NHL blow his top about officiating, which led to an injury to Corpusalo. He was correct in going, this has actually led to an injury of a player. But apparently you can't openly, slam the officials of a sport. Because, there's no transparency, because transparency is not a thing when it comes to officiating and disciplining of officials. The NFL has, come under a lot of criticism for the standard of officiating for a long time now. This is not a recent thing. This is a long-term issue with officiating in the NFL. It's not a new debating point. But you could say the same about the NBA with the betting scandal, raising questions about the integrity of officials. You could say the same about the NHL with some of the bizarre, what is goaltender interference? A couple of years ago, every other game, there was a player charging the goalie. It's a goal. Is it not a goal? And Gary Bettman comes out and says, we're not going to call it. We're going to instruct officials to, not to call it. The USA and Iran have played together against each other in the World Cup multiple times. 98 was the one where the Iranians won that game. I think 2014, I think the USA won their game. I also think officiating has declined across a multitude of sports. Can you blame the instant replay? Or is it because the pace of the sports has increased? The skill level of players has increased. The physicality of players has increased. There could be a variety of reasons why officiating. But that is an opinion. You have to look at the actual facts. Now, the NRL in Australia, again, the officials have been really blasted down there. The Super League here in Rugby League, the officials have been blasted. The Rugby Union World Cup, the officiating was very, very good. I will say this, Rugby Union officials seem to be less under the spotlight in a sense because they get 90% of the decisions correct. Football, or soccer as you guys might call it if you're from the US, that is something which gets interesting. Very interesting. There's a lot of debate about VAR. Done a video on that, and the debate is really interesting. The fact it took association football, if we'll call it that, soccer, football, so long to bring in, technology to assist the on-field officials is, I don't know. It boggles the mind that when Sepp Blatter was in charge of FIFA, he was so against goal line technology and so against what has now become VAR, so video technology to assist the on-field officials. It really, really, really boggles belief that you wouldn't want to assist those running the game and make sure the correct decisions are made. I wouldn't say it's taking the human element out of the game because there's always someone reviewing the replay in the replay booth. There is still a human element behind it, because you have to find the right bit of the replay to go, that's where the incident, that's where the foul play happened, that's where the offside happened, that's where the breaking of the rules happened, that's where the player's in touch, or that's where the puck has that's where the puck is offside. There is still a human element because they have to communicate with a guy controlling the replay to go, can you skip to frame 7 of this replay? There is still a human element there, and there are still errors there. It just is a bit more of a efficient system than I went before. It also means retrospective action against players who commit foul play. It means more players are pulled up for foul play than were before. It means players can get away with less than they were before. Yes. The Conte compensation. I mean, this is the problem with modern football. Is these managers are? I mean, Ancelotti's contract at Everton is 11 million a year. He earns more in an hour than I earn in a month. Okay, he takes home more in an hour than I do in a month salary. There will be a massive compensation clause to say if he's sacked or resigns earlier than his contract states, he'll get a payout. Massive payout. The Conte one, though, I mean, this is insane. I mean, he only had a year left on his contract. He signed a 3-year contract and lasted 2. I feel that modern football, it's not, the finances aren't sustainable. And with the FA now being under severe pressure because they allowed betting companies to broadcast games, free streaming on their websites and apps is exceptionally concerning. Especially when, in order, by somebody like Bet365, I'm going to name drop here, in order for potential customers, you had to place a bet on the game. You had to sign up to have an account. And it undermines the message of we're supporting addiction. Okay, we're supporting mental health awareness, which the charity of the round undermines that message entirely. It contradicts that message entirely. And it's not a good image for the FA to have an organisation that's already under pressure in relations to all these instances of hooligan, racist, homophobic, sexism, all this in the sport. So football and the Conte compensation thing, the whole money thing worries me intensely. Really worries me intensely. I think it's got to the point now where the sport is so corrupt that it's getting out of hand. Is UFC following? UFC is. I've got a lot of friends who do mixed martial arts. UFC does have a sort of following. There was a UFC event at the. I think there's a UFC event coming up at the O2 in March, I believe. But I'm not a fan of UFC, or even I prefer Bellator, but even then, I've rarely watched Bellator, which is on free-to-air TV in this country. So, the issue I think, especially the UFC brand has, is people like Conor McGregor and their antics. It's not just Conor McGregor. There's a whole host of UFC fighters who misbehave. Conor McGregor is making a lot of headlines for the wrong reasons. There is a following. Obviously, MMA is no longer as underground as it was 20, 30 years ago. It has exploded with following and the amount of money coming in and the money it makes. But I have a lot of concerns about mixed martial arts going forward. And, I've seen my fair bit of it. And I don't mind it, but I'm not a fan of the UFC brand. I'm not a fan of Dana White. I'm not a fan of a lot of the roster they have. I have my concerns about how they're handling the talent, how they're allowing people like Conor McGregor to get away with the antics like he gets away with, which I think are wrong. If you or I do that in the street, what he's done, we're facing some lengthy prison time. This is, he's not very popular in his home country of Ireland either. Thierry Henry coming here to Montreal in the MLS. He failed at Monaco very, very badly. While he was assistant to Martinez at the Belgian FA, he's quite good as an assistant. His coaching resume at Monaco, it did not go very well. As a player, he's obviously one of the greatest players, of all time. in my eyes, of the modern era at least. As a coach, I'm not so sure. But it didn't work at Monaco. Hopefully, it works at Montreal, and he can get a more positive coaching resume. A lot of football fans in Europe don't see the MLS as a proper league. They don't rate it. I think that's unfair. I think from what I've seen of the MLS and the games I've watched, it's very open. It's end-to-end stuff. It's full of mistakes and lower quality. Absolutely, it's not the Premier League. It's not La Liga. It's just a very open, fun style of football to watch because it's so many mistakes, so open. I really enjoy it to watch. I think it's much more fun to watch. It's much more open. The error rate makes it exciting because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how bad that defender is going to screw up. You don't know how bad that forward's going to screw up. The goaltenders. It is fun. I don't know. I think I wouldn't say bad players are great managers. I would say this: just because someone, what was it, is a superstar player doesn't make them a superstar manager, and just because someone wasn't a superstar player doesn't make them. I think it's more okay. You look at some. I mean, Zidane has done great things. Guardiola was a pretty good player as well. Let's not deny that. Solskjaer is having his struggles, admittedly, but Ancelotti, Roma and AC Milan legend, one of the best managers in the modern game. Not gonna lie, he's pretty good. I think Klopp, pretty solid player in his time for Mainz. Not outstanding, but a solid professional football player. Pretty good manager as well. Some football players who play at the top tier do go on to be pretty solid managers at the top level. But then there are others who are not, as good as players, who are pretty solid, average players, who go on to become superstar managers. Zidane, however, I think has got the footballing brain to be what he is. No, I don't think Messi or Ronaldo, they're in it for the money at this point. I think if Messi and Ronaldo were the age now they were 10 years ago, they wouldn't have won so many Ballon d'Ors. I think the quality of football is less now than what it was when Figo, Nedved, Shevchenko and all that and co were playing. I honestly believe that the quality of player now is so much lesser that these guys, they go, oh, they've scored so many goals, they must get the Ballon d'Or. I actually think the Ballon d'Or should go to the best all-round player. And that's where your Luis Figos come in. That's where, your Mendietas, your Shevchenkos, some of these players now who create the goals for Messi and Ronaldo and co don't get a hint. Hunting, not really. The laws on firearm ownership are very strict in this country. In the UK, you have to go through so many hurdles to be able to get a shotgun license. So it's very, very difficult for you to get a firearms license now. We were smart. Unlike the Americans, we had a couple of mass shootings and decided, we're going to limit the amount of firearms we have in circulation because people keep getting, keep getting shot. We're gonna actually stop selling firearms to everyone, and I think we have some very strict gun laws. You can still go hunting. It's not illegal in this country to go hunting. It's not, as long as you have a firearms license and you obey the rules. Yeah, you can go up to the Highlands. You can go to Dartmoor. You can go grouse hunting. Grouse is a type of bird. Go up on the moors, on the heathlands. So you can do it. It's just not as common as it is over in North America. Firearm ownership is nowhere near as high as what it once was. It's the same in New Zealand now. You have a mass shooting and you go, you know what, actually, idiots shouldn't have guns. But no, there is still, you can still go, grouse hunting, shooting and deer hunting. It's just not as popular. You either got to have a lot of land and be quite wealthy, or go through so many hoops, and you got to have so many background checks to even get to that stage. And yeah, fox hunting is semi-legal in this country. It's a grey area. They've really balls that up. I don't think it's looked down upon. I think culture's changed. Less people live in rural areas now than they did 100 years ago. We're a very urban population over here in the UK because the country, the actual space we have to live in, it's a cultural thing. I think more people live in the big towns and cities than in the rural areas. That's where most of the population is. We're all on top of each other, whereas in the US and Canada, you've got so much space. The wilderness is still the wilderness in large parts of North America. I prefer shooting as a sport. So I used to be a member of a shooting club. I like shooting on a range. For me, that's I think where firearm ownership should really end. But it's a cultural thing. You go to Europe, hunting's still pretty common in the Alps and the Pyrenees and the Carpathian Mountains. Some people do it as a living. They hunt deer to sell the venison. It's still a thing. People still are huntsmen. But again, it's a cultural thing. I think hunting as sport, I think, is wrong. Hunting for food or for a job is different. That's where I think that's the difference, personally. I think, yeah, again, cultural. Although Tasmania has the worst mass shooting in Australian history at Port Arthur. So, ironically, there is that link there in Tasmania. But Australia, again, it's you've got vermin control, which is one thing. So, and again, it's a cultural thing. And there's a big thing about should we buy back firearms and all this and various bits and pieces. But shooting as a sport, the UK is very, very good at. We have a lot of shooting clubs, and we have two very, very close to me. One is very close to my work, and another one is very, very close to where I live. So we do have a history in the sport of shooting at the Olympics and World Championships and things where we're very, very good. So doing it as sport on a range and clay pigeon shooting and range shooting, pistol shooting, we are very, very good at it as a country. But when it comes to hunting, I think because we're a very urban society here in the UK compared to North America, where there's a lot more wilderness, and hunting can be a survival thing where you've got a bear, or you've got a bear problem, or a wolf problem, and the local authorities say you have to kill so many bears or wolves to control population. We'll pay you for it. That's a job. That's culling. That's a thing. But I live in the southeast. I live near London. So a friend of mine lives in the southwest. I've got family in the southwest. I live in the southeast. Lots of towns. But there's also a lot of countryside. There's a lot of rural areas as well in between the towns. But it's a thing. The urbanisation, very concentrated population, lots of towns and cities all really on top of each other. We are more than just London in the UK. We do live outside London. We don't all sound posh. We have all the various accents, and the Americans especially find them really funny. But I don't think a guy from Newcastle or Liverpool being laughed at for his accent would take too kindly to that, because they'll probably have you, with a fist to your face. Zach Bogosian wanting to be out of Buffalo. The issue with Zach Bogosian is we had him before. He's a decent defenseman. He's experienced at this point, but he's very injury prone. And that is a concern. If you've got a player at his stage of his career who hasn't quite panned out to the levels that were expected and has had a history of repeat injuries, that's a concern when you need to have a strong a strong defense score. When you have a player like that who hasn't fulfilled his potential necessarily, he's still a solid NHL player. There's no denying that he is a solid NHL defenseman, but he's injury prone. And in that kind of position, when you need a player to stay fit for a whole season, we already have enough problems with defensive injuries and lack of depth. If he's sitting there injured Plus, we don't have the cap space. We're going to have to trade someone. I don't think we have anyone that we want to trade because I think that the team that we have right now is playing very, very well. They are winning games, if not spectacularly. And there's already a sense that our defense is weaker than what it was 12 months ago. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens with Zach Bogosian and where he goes, because clearly he wants to get traded. But when a player is so vocal about wanting out of an organisation, it makes other GMs very wary about signing this player or trading for this player, considering that he's showing a little bit of petulance, maybe, or a bit of a, I'm having a huff, I'm not happy here. But you have to ask the reasons why he's not happy at Buffalo. And he's been he's been through the team through the tough times since I think 2016 he got traded there. I know he was part of the Evander Kane trade. Oh, it's all over the British news as well. I have no interest in Prince Harry. I've met him. He's a big rugby fan. He's also not the man he was 5 years ago. He's completely changed since he's met her. She's not very popular over here. Yeah. I don't really care, to be honest. It's just blown up. But the American media is obsessed with our royal family, even though you fought a revolution to get rid of us, and a couple more wars as well, including the War of 1812, to make sure we stayed away. And then you invaded Canada and lost. So I don't know about that one. The American media is obsessed about several people in our culture. They are obsessed. The royal family, several sports stars. So Wayne Rooney, keep your grandmothers locked up. He's a granny shagger. That's the thing. When he was 18, he had a liaison with a 44-year-old prostitute. That's Wayne Rooney. David Beckham and Victoria Beckham, they're obsessed about them as well. There's a couple of football players who they are obsessed about. A couple of sports stars over here, the US media are quite obsessed about. And the royal family. I have no idea why. But the royal family have realised the US are mad about them, and they really sell themselves to the American media. But you guys are welcome to them, because guess what? The British public, on the most part, don't want them. And it's an interesting one. I mean, they've stepped down from their official royal duties, which means going around, meeting and greeting the plebs, so to speak. Look, Prince Charles is very, very, very. Again, he's actually a guy who likes hunting. Ironically, Prince Charles has obviously been very, very vocal about environmental protection, and the Highland Games. There's a lot to do with the Highland Games as well, where when they go up the Highlands in the summer and they have the Highland Games, where you have the caber toss and things like that, and the various Highland sports, where they even play shinty and a few other bits and pieces. He is very vocal about environmental issues and sustainability of a lot of things, including the Highland Games. He has been very, very vocal about making the Highland Games more environmentally sustainable when they put them on. I'm not a Prince Charles fan, but I think his environmentalism, he's been doing it since the 70s. Very underrated, environmental protectionist. The Prince Andrew, let's not get on about Epstein. He didn't hang himself. This is not a political channel. The other channel is the political channel. This is the sports channel. But again, Prince Andrew and that whole thing, he's not very popular over here either. He's one of the several royals that we don't like, and we would rather the Americans had them and put him in prison. Because Prince Andrew's an arse. I've met him as well. He's an absolute arse. Oh, Jesus. That whole situation is a discussion for the other channel, but I'm going to say this: Epstein didn't kill himself. Enough said on politics and the royal family. The last time I had a political discussion on this channel, year and a half ago, I was doing a live stream, and my North American viewers were like, "Oh, you like the NHL? You like, you follow the MLS?" I was like, "Yeah, And one of them decided, so what's your views on Donald Trump? And then an hour and a half later, I'd finally stopped ranting. And then the next day, I did another live stream, and the viewer was there. And he was like, I apologize for last night's question. I was like, that's fine. It's fine. You're a newbie to the channel. It's fine. And then someone else asked the question, what's my views on Donald Trump? And it sort of was a no-go area. Politics and sport, though, can be linked, but in this case, with the royal family, yes, they're massive sports patrons. Princess Anne, I think, is the chairman of the Scottish Rugby Football Union. The Prince of Wales is a massive Aston Villa fan. So Prince Billy Baby, he's an Aston Villa fan, and he's also a patron of rugby league and rugby union. Prince Harry, again, patron of is a big rugby union fan as well. And excuse me. And a whole host of other royals have various links with sport. Princess Anne actually competed at the Olympics in the equestrian events. So there is a link between the royal family and a lot of the sports in the UK. So that's the thing. My prediction on the College Football National Championship: I haven't watched any American football for 12 months since last year's Super Bowl, which was the worst Super Bowl ever. So since last year's Super Bowl, I've not watched a single CFL or NFL game, and I'm not joking. I didn't even watch the Winnipeg Blue Bombers win, the CFL. So yeah, I haven't watched any North American football, so CFL or NFL, for nearly a year. 10 months, 11 months with no American football. I'm going to go LSU just because they regularly produce NFL talent, and I'm just going to go with LSU. Their production line of talent that goes to the NFL and some to the CFL is well known, so I would pick LSU. The Brady question, we've answered that. I think if he's not going to stay at the Patriots, I don't think he goes anywhere else. I think he will just stay a free agent and then announce his retirement. But again, these are rumors and this is speculation. And until the Patriots come out and say he is no longer our player, until Tom Brady says anything about his future, it's speculation and it's clickbait. And I hate that. Am I looking forward to the Six Nations? Yes, I am. I've done my Six Nations preview video, so we haven't got long. We've only got just over a month. I think it's going to be a very open Six Nations. I think we could look at the fact that Wayne Pivac is the new Wales coach, and Stephen Jones, having gone to the World Cup with the squad, admittedly earlier than he intended to be backs coach because of the old Rob Howley situation. Questions will be asked of Warren Gatland and the senior playing group about Rob Howley, okay, and the betting allegations in due course. I think that will come out in the fullness of time. I am looking forward to it. Eddie Jones obviously is, confirmed that he's staying till 2021. World Cup finalists. They want to build on that. Wales, new coach, new era. Ireland, new coach, new era. Italy, new coach, new era. France, new coach, new era. And then Gregor Townsend is facing the chopping block with Scotland because they really had, out of the Six Nations, they actually had the worst World Cup by their standards. They really... Well, they were a mess. Defensively, they are all over the place. There's a real poor structure there defensively. And in attack, it's hit and miss. They are so Jekyll and Hyde as a team. And away from Murrayfield, their form doesn't exist. WWE Wrestling, they've got a new TV rights deal in this country. They've moved from Sky Sports, what would be Fox in the US, to BT Sport over here, which would be Comcast in the US. Get what I'm getting at? Kind of comparison, although Comcast owns Sky here now, not Rupert Murdoch. So there's a new TV deal for WWE over here. Pro wrestling is exceptionally popular in the UK. We've hosted Impact shows, so the old TNA. A lot of the wrestling roster have come through the UK. We have a very, very popular independent circuit, and a few of my friends wrestle on the independent circuit here in the UK. So I've seen independent shows. I've helped set up independent shows. I know how the ring is put together, and I can tell you now, you do not want to be suplexed on one of them. It does hurt. Wrestling is not fake. It's kayfabe. It's storyline. The wrestling moves legitimately can break your neck. I had a friend who nearly got paralyzed by being badly tombstoned, who someone screwed up the move and nearly killed him. So WWE's got a brand new TV deal in this country. The TV rights have changed hands. Whether that's a good thing or not is yet to be known, because throughout my entire life, it's always been on Sky Sports, like Fox Sports in the US. It's now on a TV company that is struggling for viewership. and is losing money. So that's an interesting one. TNA, what is now Impact Wrestling, has been very, very popular. The program that Impact Wrestling's on free-to-air TV in the UK. Sky used to have the rights to WWE. It's now gone to BT Sport. You might have to do a video about that. Very, 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 very popular independent circuit. And the WWE have done house shows here. TNA do a lot of house shows here, or Impact. AEW, I think, are going to do some house shows here and tape shows. So the big wrestling promotions, other than WWE, have done house shows here. WWE has done house shows here. There is a British talent pool that have wrestled not just only in WWE, but also Impact, AEW, Ring of Honor. It's WWE is losing its grip on the monopoly it has of pro wrestling. Since the WCW, WWE, or what was WWF, Monday Night Wars in the late 90s, 2000s, wrestling has declined in popularity. Overall, as a global thing, it's not as popular as what it was 20 years ago. And you can look at the death of Eddie Guerrero, my favorite wrestler. There you go. My favorite wrestler of all time is Eddie Guerrero. His untimely death at a very young age, late 30s. I think he was 37 when he died. Chris Benoit, that whole situation, China. There's been a lot of wrestlers who were still active at the time they died, or not long after retiring when they died, which has left a real bitter taste in the mouth of a lot of wrestling fans. A lot of fans have switched off. With the PG era being what it is, a lot of fans have gone, this is just not the same anymore. And WWE is losing viewers and money. It's losing popularity. So everyone loves a bit of Stone Cold. Everyone loves a bit of The Rock. Undertaker retires and then keeps retiring and then kind of keeps going. I can remember the late stages of Hulkamania in the early 90s when Hulk Hogan was still a big ticket for Vince McMahon. Kane, yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, pro wrestling, while it's sports entertainment, it's had a lot of scandal since the early 90s. The steroid scandal, where there was a federal indictment against Vince McMahon, and he had to give evidence. The steroid trial in 1994, it's there's been a fair bit of scandal. The deaths of a multitude of wrestlers, including Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, China, Ultimate Warrior is now dead. I can remember when it was still WWF until I think 2003, I believe, or 2002 when it changed because it was sued by the World Wildlife Federation. It was very, very popular in the 90s and 2000s, but the end of the Attitude Era and certain things that happened, such as the Chris Benoit murder-suicide with his family, that really damaged the image of the organization. And then CM Punk being very vocal in the last decade or so about how the rostered talent is treated, injuries, health issues, drug abuse, steroid abuse. He really ruffled the feathers of a lot of people in the industry, especially Vince McMahon. There was litigations and stuff. Colt Cabana, his podcast is very, very interesting to listen to. And Chris Jericho is a really interesting listen as well on his podcast. They are, they're two semi-retired wrestlers who are actually very, very good media personalities as well about discussing wrestling outside the ring. Vicky Guerrero on Chris Jericho's podcast, and she was also on Colt Cabana's podcast, is Eddie Guerrero's widow. Again, very open about life outside the ring and the actual effects on family and friends of having to go on your partner being on all these recorded house shows and stuff going all around not just America but around the world, and the time away from family and the issues with that. Brock Lesnar, how many times did he fail his steroids tests and his UFC spin as well? I think the issue we have with pro wrestling is not the fact that it's sports entertainment. It is the welfare of the athletes. These are supreme athletes. A lot of wrestlers have done some MMA and boxing and kickboxing and a variety of other martial arts. And some of them have done, like Kurt Angle, collegiate wrestling. So actually been to the Olympics as wrestlers. Mark Henry, world's strongest man, actually competed in the world's strongest man endurance event. So, while, yeah, they are wrestlers and pro wrestlers, they're also athletes in their own right in some of their other chosen sporting fields. I mean, some of them played American football and all sorts. Yeah, Kurt Angle won gold with a broken neck as well. He broke his neck in the semi-final, the bronze medal match. He broke his neck. So he wrestled the gold medal match at the Atlanta Olympics with 2 broken vertebrae in his neck. He could have been paralyzed. Kurt Angle's a lunatic, the cyborg. He's mad. I think looking back at the Attitude Era, I enjoyed it immensely. But my God, some of the stuff they were writing storylines was not appropriate at any point. It was really, you look back at the Attitude Era now and you just want to be physically sick. Will I be watching the Olympics? I'll try my best. It's the time difference, really. But I managed to watch a fair bit of the Rugby World Cup at the end of last year. I will try my best to watch as much of the Olympics as possible. I did watch a lot of the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics 2 years ago now. So I will try my best to watch as much as possible. But at the same time, I do have work. And, I've got to balance work and, social schedules. But I will try my best. But the time difference is a killer. And so, yeah. I will try my best to cover as much as possible, but I prefer the Winter Olympics over the Summer Olympics anyway, because of the ice hockey tournament and the downhill skiing and the ski cross and snowboard cross events. Having lived in a ski resort, I kind of prefer the winter sports over the summer sports. And again, Euro 2020 is earlier in the summer. The Olympics takes place in August, and Euro 2020 takes place in June, July. So the Euros will come first in the summer, and that's going to be really interesting as well, because it's the only time the Euros will be played across multiple cities and multiple countries. That's going to be really, really interesting. My thoughts on the Champions League this year. I don't really have a view on European club football anymore, really. I think the TV rights issue, whereby there's no free-to-air coverage anymore, is a problem. I think I'm more looking forward to the internet. I prefer international football over club football now. I actually prefer. Well, I love the FA Cup and things like that, and I used to love the Champions League religiously and the Europa League, and I can remember the Cup Winners' Cup until the late 90s. I remember the Cup Winners' Cup in the 90s. Well, I love cup football. Club football, when it's pure league, I don't enjoy it anymore when it's just league games. I prefer the cup competitions, and I really prefer international football over club football. My thoughts on it, I don't know. I think Liverpool could go back to back. I think they could do that. I think that with the way they're playing right now, where they're even winning games when they're not playing well, they're even winning games when they're putting up the half the youth side against full strength teams, and they're winning it at a canter, even though the scoreline might not suggest it. They're outplaying teams with kids. So there's clearly a very positive atmosphere with the team. BT's quality of, I honestly believe that BT won't have those rights for very long. And and you look at the viewership figures for the 2 live games in the FA Cup this weekend. Their viewership figures, I think one had over 7 million and one had over 6 million at peak audience for the FA Cup. Third round, peak audience. Free to air always gets a bigger audience than subscription. The Cricket World Cup final proved that. World Cup in Russia a year and a half ago proved that. The Rugby Union World Cup proved that. When BT Sport is averaging less than, I think, is it? Oh yeah, it's free. No, you can get it on the. You can watch the final, both Europa League and Champions League on YouTube. That's why I like YouTube. They show the finals on YouTube, but they don't show any other games. That's the problem. If they had a joint, it's like when Sky and ITV had the shared rights. I was happy with that. I didn't give a toss that Sky had 80, 90% of the games. ITV had shared rights with Sky. It worked. It worked very, very well. That is how it should have remained. Freedom of choice. Unfortunately, the production values of BT is so bad, and BT Sport is so shocking. People illegally stream it. It's easier. I do. I'm sorry, I'm not paying. I've already got the internet and mobile phone through EE, which is owned by BT. I'm sorry, I think BT Sport has been hemorrhaging money. The guy who came up with the idea to have a TV sports network has been fired, and they've lost so much money that the mobile phone and internet is propping up the sports channel. And this is what we saw with ITV Sport failing and Setanta. If BT Sport goes under, which it will, because at some point shareholders are going to say, we've had enough of this. This product is not working. We're not happy with it affecting the company brand and the negativity that we are getting. We'll ditch it. My favourite one was Real versus Atletico Madrid in 2014. That was my favourite because it was the last one that we had free to wear. Also, Dortmund versus Munich in 2012. That's another one that sticks with me. I watched that with my friend. How do you manage? I'm not going to give away all my trade secrets. Not at all. That's not fair. I can't give away all my trade secrets. That would be inappropriate. There are ways to do it. There's VPNs. You can just get a VPN. Just get a VPN and change your location to Holland or Germany where you're accessing from, and then they can't block you. Because in those countries, it's free to wear. There you go. You can get the British feeds. It's just free to wear, and they can't block you. This is where the oh god, yeah. Some of them are very, very. Do I like boxing? I used to spar with some. I've got a couple of friends who own boxing gyms, so I do and I don't. I don't like the direction boxing's going right now with the Hearns and their branding and the amount of pay-per-views and the fact there's not enough boxing on free-to-air TV and boxers are dying at an increasing rate young while they're still actively professional fighters rather than post-retirement. I'm not. I like the sport. I don't like the direction the sport's taking. It's not hard. It's not hard to find streams. The amount of money the TV and media companies put in trying to block us, just make it more accessible. Christ, it's not hard. It's not hard to make sport more accessible. It's proven that free accessibility, where you just have commercial advertising on a free internet stream or free to air TV, attracts viewers. It may make less money, but bigger viewership means your product you can sell more other associated crap as well, or at least make the subscriptions on internet subscriptions. I can watch the NRL for like 120 quid a year. That's it. VPNs. No, all you got to do is change your VPN location to Holland or Sweden, Switzerland, Italy, any country that has the sport you want on free-to-air TV. So Champions League, F1. I hate F1, but F1, anything like that, watch it for free. And the VPN costs pittance compared to a Sky or BT subscription. It costs absolute pittance. Really does. It really does cost not a lot of money to get the subscription. It really doesn't cost that much. And a lot of sports are now starting to stream full match highlights and full match replays, or even live on YouTube and other video sharing platforms. And the fact that more people, I think it was the last Anthony Joshua fight before the Ruiz rematch and the one before he lost. One of Joshua's fights, more people watched on VPN than on the TV. This guy's back again. Really? God, this guy is persistent. He's been persistent for about a month now. I think, the problem is a lot of streams, it's because they do try and find him. And, he comes back every week. All he's doing is actually creating more views and, more traffic. And if enough people, come in the stream, fine. But it's just sad. It's just sad. He's been doing it for about 2 years. It's just fine. I've probably blocked him at some point. He keeps coming up with some really interesting names. YouTube don't do anything about it, though. This is the thing. When I go to report all this abuse, okay, and I get a lot of it, it's from the same people. It's the same 2-3 people. When you go to the reporting section, it just goes through all the protocols. I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake, he probably knows my IRL. Whatever. He's trying to sabotage the channel, so whatever. Let him go on with it, because I keep regularly making sure the health of the channel, complying with the regulations that YouTube puts out. I've got no black marks against my name, no copyright violations. Do I think any player will make Messi or Ronaldo numbers? I think, as I say, the quality of play, I think, has dropped. You look at the Ballon d'Or winners from the 90s and the 2000s before Messi and Ronaldo dominate the last decade or so. A lot of them were midfielders, and a lot of them scored a lot less goals. They were more creative. They were more all-round players who could do things at both ends of the field by breaking up play and then creating attacks. And yeah, they could score some wonder goals. You look at the Ballon d'Or winners now; it's between these two, really, with the odd aberration in there. Because I think the general quality across the board, across all the top leagues in Europe, is less now than what it was then. That's my personal opinion. So it makes it easier for these guys to really bang in 40, 50 goals a season. Whereas 10, 15 years ago, no player was scoring 40, 50 goals a season. Because overall, the starting 11 a team would put on the pitch would be better. They just really would kick lumps at you. Van Dijk should have won it. I think the way that the voting's done now, it's all about, look, they're scoring 40, 50 goals a season. There's more to football than just banging the ball in the back of it. What do I think that is? Look, players are getting overpaid. An average player now goes for 40, 50, 60 million in the transfer market. Harry Maguire going for 80 million. There you go. So the transfer market, the overinflated wages. Honestly, I don't think football is as good now as what it was 10, 20 years ago. I honestly think back then, you could have a quality set of a quality team that would be mid-table. And you had some really good players playing for some very mediocre clubs. Now, there's some very mediocre players playing for some very good clubs. And I think, I don't know what it is. I think money has had an impact. I think there's less players playing for the joy of the game. They're playing for the money. So they are mercenary players, basically. We're seeing issues with a lot more players burning out young. I think the style of football has, since the Spain tiki-taki era of the 2000s, 2010s, I think that's sucked the life out of the game a bit, out of the sport a bit. The amount of corruption scandals that have popped out of nowhere, well, not out of nowhere, but the amount of match-fixing scandals, betting scandals, and other corruption-based stuff, and I think that's sort of damaged the image of the sport. I think players are overcoached. If you know what I mean? I think they're overcoached, where instead of being allowed in attack to express themselves and find the space, they're told you have to go here, you have to go there, you have to do this, you have to do that. Coached defensively, absolutely. But when you've got the ball at your feet and you've got someone like David Luiz, who really should be a sweeper or a defensive deep line midfielder who can be given free rein to roam in that pocket in between the forward midfield players and the defence, or just roam from behind the back four through to the midfield. When you've got a player like that who has got very good skill, who's not very defensively minded, it makes it more fun. When the games were more open and end-to-end and free-flowing, I think it's a better product than the overcoached, the media coached. There's less characters in the sport now as well. They are literally droids. A lot of them are coached to death, and they're afraid of thinking on their feet. They're afraid of expressing themselves freely and allowing their skills to do the talking. And just look at the Brazil side of 1970 is the best way to describe it. Look at the Dutch side, the total football, where each player knew that they could go from left back to right wing and they could play anywhere. they were allowed to express themselves. The Argentinian side of 78. That was not the best side on paper. They had some luck getting to that World Cup final, but they weren't the best side on paper. The Dutch were. They blew it because they were slightly overcoached. It started, I think, in the mid-90s with the Brazil sides, becoming more defensively minded and more structured, and that made football less fun. And then other teams realised, or it's the same with the New Jersey Devils in the mid-90s playing the trap. It really sucked the life out of the sport for a while. Goal scoring goes down. Ironically, goal scoring in the World Cups has been going up. But yeah, I think the 2010s, the ticky-tacky, it sucked the life out of it. They weren't the best team I've ever watched. They would get to 1-0, then bore you to death, and then the opposition would literally just be bored to death. I think, for me, my favourite World Cup was 2006. I think 2018 and 2014 actually come second and third. I really think 2006 for me was the pinnacle of football. And then it got really the ticky-tacky and it just got antiseptic. And it got to the point where the Italians used to do this in the 1930s, where they would get one goal up and then just kick the shit out of you for 80 minutes until the opposition had run out of players who were fit enough to kick a ball. That's the Italian way, was get a goal up and then sit back and defend by strangling the life out of the opposition by basically man-marking players to death and kicking lumps out of them. That was the Italian style of the 30s. The Dutch style was the total football. Tiger Woods, my views on Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods is a very controversial character, obviously. One of the greatest golfers of all time, if not the greatest of the modern era, definitely. But his personal life has overshadowed his professional achievements. The fact he's come back from repeat back and knee surgeries to perform at the level where he can still be competitive in tournaments is amazing. I don't think he wins another major. I think there's so many young, talented golfers out there. But golf is another sport that has declined as well. Viewership is down and people are switching off. And now over here in the UK, we used to have the Augusta Masters all 4 days, free-to-air TV. Now we get the last day and the last little bit of the last day. The Open used to be all 4 days free-to-air. That's gone now. Golf has sold its soul to subscription sport, much like other sports have before it, and is now paying the price. It is paying the price. I think the fact that people are saying Tiger Woods, should he retire? Should he go into the senior circuit? I still think he has got something to give to the sport. But he is a controversial figure with his private life and failing a DUI, driving under the influence of prescription narcotics, and his private life with all the affairs and his less than honourable intentions when it comes to his married life. That blew up in the headlines. I think he's still possibly the greatest golfer of all time, but I think other golfers, technically and for personality and how they conducted themselves or how they played and when they were at their peak, are just as good. He's just won so much. But other golfers have also been pretty good as well. There have been some other pretty good golfers who would rank equal for when they were at their peak, at their best. Tiger Woods would have a hard time beating them on, let's say, a links course, on a round or 4 rounds. I think there are some other golfers on their day in their own era who would beat Woods. But for overall, his overall achievements are there for all to see. But when it comes to actually, I wouldn't say he's the most boring golfer of all time. He does design a lot of the golf courses now. But Nick Faldo, another guy who has a very colourful private life that has overshadowed his achievements in the sport for winning. He won the green jacket. I remember him winning the green jacket. As a sports fan, that was a very proud moment as a British sports fan going, he's, beating Greg Norman there. Good going. And I like Greg Norman, the Shark. He's my favourite golfer. Bear that in mind. He is my favourite golfer. Anyone can join the chat as long as they're not that moron troll, because then they'll just get blocked and banned. Then you have to set up another fake profile, which takes some time and doing. And I would say Nick Faldo is not the most expansive golfer, but actually, again, his career stats and record would say on his day he was pretty good. Is NASCAR on the TV? NASCAR streams all their races live on YouTube, and then if you're outside the US, you can watch them a day or two later. So I've watched a fair bit of NASCAR. Over the last few years, I've missed a few races here or there, but NASCAR is more accessible because they have a YouTube channel and they broadcast all the races live stream. And if you're outside the US, you can watch them a day or two later, full race replay with no adverts. So NASCAR has done pretty well with expanding the reach of their sport. Now, NASCAR is a sport that has its own problems. I don't like the playoff system. I think it should be the best driver should win the championship, not the guy who can just survive getting knocked out in the last 8 races of the season. Because you could have a crap season, win 1 race in the regular season, and make it to the playoffs, and only win 1 race, but be consistent and win 2 races all year. And or ironically, you could actually not win a single race until all season and win the championship. Work that one out. You just have to finish in the top so many points positions and get through. You could ironically, absolutely ironically, win the NASCAR championship in theory without winning a single race. It is theoretically possible to do that. If you, as long as you stay above the cutoff point, once you're in the playoffs, and stay above the cutoff point all the way through to Homestead at the end of the season, and you finish above your competitors in that final race, you win the championship. That is how flawed the system is. I like the fact that they're now showing the truck races as well, which they weren't showing before on the YouTube channel. So they're trying to grow the development formula in NASCAR. I do think more sports will go the way of streaming, and more leagues will go the way of streaming on platforms like YouTube and creating that accessibility, because there is the debate about subscription TV and streaming on a VPN. Ricky Bobby is the best of all time. Again, that's before my time of watching NASCAR. That is well before my time of watching oval racing. My time starts in the mid-90s after Days of Thunder was in the cinemas. The only Tom Cruise film I actually like, ironically, because it's got Nicole Kidman in it. My time watching NASCAR was just before Dale Earnhardt Sr. died. That's my time of watching the sport. So for me, that's before my time. And anything pre-1995 in NASCAR is before my time, before I watched it, before I had an interest. And a lot of my friends are going, why do you watch this crap? They're only going around turning left. There's a bit more to it than that. When you're going over 200 miles an hour and you're millimeters apart from the opposition, the other car, and you're banging. Oh, go away, you annoying moron. I know it's the Talladega Nights movie character, but I don't watch Talladega Nights. I don't like that kind of I think looking at NASCAR, Ricky Bobby, I have seen Talladega Nights. I don't rate it as a film. It's not that funny. It's not their best work out of all those actors. It's not their best work. But anything pre-95 when it comes to NASCAR, I can't comment on anything before my time really watching. But what was it like in 2006 for the Football World Cup? That's an earlier question. To be honest, I think it was the way the football was played. It was the way 2010 was the worst World Cup I think I have seen since 1994. That was a terrible World Cup. But the way they were playing the football and the way that Argentina's goal against Serbia, where like every player touched the ball, it was like 29 passes before Cambiasso puts it in the net, was possibly one of the best goals of all time. Messi wasn't involved at all in that. Argentina really had a midfield of Serene and Riquelme and Cambiasso, and there was a few other players in that midfield. Crespo was part of the Argentina squad in 2006. I think that was probably the best Argentina squad they put on a field and in a World Cup, and they fell in a penalty shootout to the Germans. I don't think 86 was the worst World Cup. I've got I think 94 for me was a very stale World Cup. It's the first one I watched, but 2010 I think was the worst World Cup I've seen, and I've seen every World Cup since 1994. I think 2010 was a terrible tournament, really, really negative. I think the goal scoring was actually lower in 2010 than in 2006, and that was the first time goals per game dropped. You know, and that I think was the decade where football really the quality level was less. And I think football's still recovering from that 2010 World Cup. This is where I fear Qatar could be just as bad. I really do fear the Qatar World Cup is going to be just as bad as the 2010 World Cup in South Africa. And fair play to the South Africans for hosting the tournament and everything that went with that. But for me, that was I think 2018 third place. I think the VAR, while it works, it delayed the games. England having a good tournament helped. I think Belgium playing well helped. Croatia getting to their first World Cup final, I think, was again a real positive. I think the French winning, I think, was I think it's interesting. I think the 2018 comes third, 2014 Brazil comes second, and 2006 comes first. I think that's how I would rank my World Cups of favourite World Cups. I think 94 and 2010 were diabolical. France 98, I think, comes fourth for me. Simply because it's the first World Cup where I really got into it and really enjoyed it, and I watched all the knockout games. And Croatia again played well in that tournament as well. And David Bergkamp's goal against Argentina, I think, is one of the best World Cup goals of all time. I think. I don't know. I think. Yeah, the French. I don't understand how the French managed to get to 2 international finals in a row in 2016 in the Euros and then in the World Cup 2 years ago. I don't know how they've done it. Pogba and Mbappe. I mean, Mbappe is good, but he's not. He plays in a very uncompetitive league. You put Mbappe in the Premier League or La Liga, he doesn't score as many goals. Or Bundesliga, he doesn't score. Even Serie A, he wouldn't score as much. Serie A is more defensive. He wouldn't score as much. Liga is at the top 5 European leagues, is the least competitive. You put Mbappe in a far more competitive league, he doesn't score as much. Personally, Pogba, God, how has he managed to become a Euro runner-up and a World Cup winner? So he's got winners' medal and runner-up medal. How has he done that? He's so overrated and he's so petulant. It's unreal. I think, the French winning, I think they just won they found a way to win and went with it. But ironically, they played in the only goalless game in the last World Cup against Denmark. It was the only game there were no goals. And that's very ironic. There didn't seem to be any kind of real plan. Didier Deschamps, I don't know how he's managed to contrive 2 finals. I don't think the French get to the Euro 2020 final. I really don't. If they do, I will be stunned. Absolutely stunned. But this is what France were like in 98 and 2000. They were the best team in the world. They managed to get to consecutive finals and win them both. World Cup 98 and 2000, they managed to win them both. I don't know how they did it. And they almost threw the World Cup final away. They were 4-1 up and they won 4-3. They almost threw that away to Croatia. They really did. They stopped playing. They weren't, they just stopped. So I think the French are very vulnerable. I think they got very, very lucky the last 2 tournaments to get what they have. The Danica Patrick dating Aaron Rodgers. Wow. She's gone from Ricky Stenhouse Jr. to Aaron Rodgers. So she's going through the Midwest. She is going through the Midwest of sports stars here. I think she's now more famous for her boyfriends and her racing talent. And at the end of the day, she's underrated as in motorsport. She has won an Indy an IndyCar race. and she has raced over here in the UK. That's where she learned her racecraft in the junior formula over here. I think, yeah, she is. I wouldn't say she's overrated or underrated. I think she doesn't get the credit she deserves for women's motorsport and being a bit of a trailblazer. The abuse she receives from NASCAR fans and IndyCar fans, I think, is unfair because most of them are fat middle-aged blokes who like drinking watered-down lager and making racial slurs against their Afro-Caribbean neighbours. So the abuse she receives online is unfair. It really is. I've seen I follow her on Twitter. Some of the abuse she's received online is pretty abhorrent. Why? Because a female's doing just as good as quite a few men are, and if not better than some. I don't get that. The fact that the sport, I mean, she stepped away from motorsport now, I think, and that's fair. That's her choice. But she's been doing it her entire adult life. I think it's only right and fair that, the GoDaddy commercials, they were good. I even seen them on the YouTube. Yes, yeah, she could sell me internet domains any day of the week. But they were a personal sponsor for a long while until our last season and a half, I think, or last 2 seasons in NASCAR. She that was their main sponsor was GoDaddy. She signed a big agreement with them to be the face of their company for media purposes. I do feel a bit sorry for her in the sense that she was always in less competitive cars than other drivers, possibly smaller budgeted teams, possibly. But at the same time, she's a trailblazer for women's motorsport. I think the fact she has actually won an IndyCar race should shut up the critics saying that women shouldn't be at the top level of motorsport. Not that I'm a fan of IndyCar, mind, but the fact that she actually gone out and won and beaten, men at their own game, I think she deserves a fair bit more credit than what she does get, and I think she deserves to have some, being cut some slack. I really do. I think. I have to admit, my early 20s, Danica Patrick on GoDaddy adverts, because we had GoDaddy over here sponsoring the IPL T20 cricket, and occasionally we would have more GoDaddy adverts. And yeah, she popped up in a few of them in the early 2010s. Tell you now that might make me buy an internet domain for $1.99. I remember Alessandro Del Piero trying to sell pasta sauce and mineral water. Joe Hart trying to sell Doritos and Head and Shoulders. God, what other bad ones have we had? Ian Wright, Mars Bar. Gary Lineker with the Walkers promotion. He's been doing that for 20 years. He's made a lot of money out of that because he's from Leicester, and Walkers is made in Leicester. Lay's to North Americans. Same company, just different brand of the company. The Walkers Crisps, the Walkers family used to sponsor Leicester City Football Club. I believe at some point they had ownership shares in the football club, and the crisp factory, or chip factory as you would call it in the US, is in Leicester. Gary Lineker is from Leicester and used to play for Leicester City. So the Walker's Crisps adverts, he's been doing them for 20, 25 years now since he retired from playing back in the early 90s. Made a lot of money out of that. Ian Rush, the milk advert for the milk board. I think, was it David James and Gillette? There's been quite a few. Nico Rosberg did a drink driving awareness campaign a couple of years ago after he became world champion. I remember that. Head and Shoulders. I mean, they've used a variety of sports stars. Over here in the UK, it's Joe Hart. I think Gillette have used. Is it the Liverpool? Is it Liverpool and Arsenal players? Liverpool and Arsenal players have been doing a lot of commercials lately for coffee and men's aftershave and shaving products and hair gel. There's been a fair few of them doing that. Alessandro Del Piero did do a pasta advert and a water advert. Pierluigi Collina, the referee, did an advert for Opel back in the day while he was still a referee. Was a face of Opel, which was at the time a GM owned car company, which is part of Opel Vauxhall, is a European version of GM, basically. Not anymore. It used to be owned by GM. Now it's not. I'm trying to think of some others. Ben Stokes has done Red Bull. Last summer he was in the Red Bull advert. Fruit Loops. Jesus Christ. We don't get them over here, thankfully. We have other crap that we eat. Sports Star. I mean, there's been, I think, was it Burger King with Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux? I think did an advert. Loads. There's been loads of sports stars, being used by advertising companies to sell their crap, and it's normally at the time that tournaments are on. I've noticed when sports stars are in adverts, it's normally when the sport they're playing. There's a big tournament. There's a big event going on, and they're trying to use them to flog. EA Sports with FIFA, a lot of players on there. Dele Alli, England midfielder, a lot of adverts for various things. Harry Kane's been involved in an advert, though he's injured at the moment. A lot of them have, but as soon as these players get their advertising campaigns, their form just disappears. I've heard of Ian Baker Finch doing advertising Snickers. There's been a lot of sports stars have advertised a lot of things and endorsed a lot of things. Some sports stars have very laugh at themselves quite a bit. I think Gary Lineker does laugh at the Walkers adverts that he does, but he's been doing them for over 20 years. There's a whole host of sports stars who endorse so many products. Under Armour, yeah, they have. I mean, I've got some Under Armour sports gear. Under Armour has definitely grown as a sports brand. It definitely sponsors a lot more teams and players and athletes. It's very popular with rugby, both league and union. Lots of players have Under Armour sponsorship. Lots of teams have Under Armour sponsorship. It is getting more and more popular. Adidas, Reebok, Nike, all the big sports companies still far ahead, but Warrior. But Under Armour does get its fair share of sponsorship deals for kits, jerseys, and sports gear, athletes. Very popular with golf as well, Under Armour. Lots of golfers are wearing Under Armour t-shirts and thermals. So it's still it's a growing brand. I think it's got a long way to compete with Adidas. Or Adidas, if some people pronounce it, and Nike, or Nike, as some pronounce it, and Reebok, and CCM, and other big sports brands. But it is very big in the United States. I am aware of that. I think Warrior's quite big over there as well. X-Blades, they've got the Major League Rugby contract. Brett Lee, go on. Brett Lee doing Google. Wow, that's. I know. So Ian Botham, Beefy, he's done shredded wheat for years. He's done shredded wheat for on and off for about 20 years as well. He's also doing what's the home healthcare thing for your circulation? He's doing a weird foot where you put your feet on this thing, this pad, and it circulates the blood around your system. Ian Botham's done a fair share of TV ads since he retired from playing. There's been a lot, and it's more interesting when ex-sport stars go into TV presenting and becoming media personalities in their own. Like Freddie Flintoff and Phil Tufnell have gone on to do great TV careers over here in the UK, ex-cricketers, and some of them are actually quite funny. And then you have, what's his name? He's an ex-gymnast. He's now a TV presenter. Oh, I've forgotten his name now. There's quite a few who've gone on into media careers other than sports media, and have done very, very well out of it. Antonio Brown is outrageous. I have seen Antonio Brown tweeting some outrageous things. I don't personally follow him on Twitter, but yeah, I think social media and sport have to be careful as well. We have seen the negative side of it in recent months, and there's been some sports stars like Antonio Brown getting into a lot of hot water over their use of social media. We've seen social media bans. We've seen players reprimanded from various leagues, told to watch their social media content and watch what they post. It has led some players and officials and clubs falling afoul of Twitter and other social media outlets like YouTube, but they've gone and said something or written something. I don't follow Antonio Brown, but I am aware that his Twitter handle is full of outrageous and sometimes quite offensive content to some. He does tweet some outrageous things, but he is not the only sports star to have an issue with social media. Or actually have, I mean, at least Christie, the British speed skater, has had to take a step back because she's admitted that her Olympic failures over the last few Olympic cycles in the Winter Olympics have affected her confidence and her mental health. So she's taking a break from social media for a while. I think in the age we're in, social media in sport, it's an interesting, very interesting relationship there. And some sports stars haven't got it right. Some teams haven't got it right. The BDO Darts, for example, have got a Twitter feed. They've really fouled that up with their social media. They've made a complete and utter mess of connecting with darts fans, for example. That's why the PDC is destroying them on all fronts. But yes, Antonio Brown, I am very well aware of his bizarre and sometimes offensive Twitter outbursts against former employers, teammates, other people. He really is. Here's the thing about concussion. It's not going to give you CTE necessarily. It can, but we need to find the link of where that is. It one concussion or is it 100? Where does that point where, okay, you've got a degenerative brain disorder kick in? Is it, are we rushing these athletes back too quickly from a concussion? Are they given that time frame for the body to recover? You don't necessarily get concussed from getting a blow to the head. You can get concussed from the whiplash effect of your head and neck swinging forward and the actual forces going through your body. That's something that a lot of people don't realize is you can be concussed when you've been smashed in the chest, the force going through your body. I think he's showing some bizarre behavior, which is consistent with having a brain injury to the frontal lobe. I can tell you this because my uncle has had a brain injury and some of his behavior gets a bit bizarre. I've had concussion, and I can tell you now I've been concussed playing rugby, and I've had concussions at work. And I can tell you now that it's not a fun experience being concussed. Yes, I did. I have seen bits and pieces about. I think Will Smith was in another film where the CT link in the NFL, where he's the doctor as well. I have seen bits and pieces of the background to the making of these films, but the issue is you can only diagnose CTE after you're dead, and that is the problem. But the amount of players who, from the NFL, NHL, rugby league, rugby union, variety of sports, boxing's the best one, the best example of Muhammad Ali getting Parkinson's. You could see while he was still a boxer, he was declining mentally with his speech and remembering things. You could physically see that he was ill long before he was diagnosed with the illness that he had. It's you can see in his interviews he's declining as a person, physically and mentally. You can see he's struggling. Boxing is the best one to look at with the link where so many boxers end up with dementia or Parkinson's. It's unreal. Unreal. And Muhammad Ali is the best example of a boxer. You can see he's like that. George Foreman is another one because you can see that he has issues with his memory at times. He's admitted, he has problems with his memory. Fighting Joe Frazier ended up penniless. He had some bizarre issues. boxing is definitely one where you can see there's an issue. The same can be said for MMA. Any contact sport where your objective is to bash your opposition in the head repetitively for up to 3 12-minute rounds. Yeah. There you go. It's kind of obvious. I think Antonio Brown is showing signs of bizarre behaviour, and I've noticed. Oh yeah, Mike Tyson, but Mike Tyson was always a violent individual anyway. I think he's predisposed to being psychotic rather than having so many concussions. He's barely been knocked out, actually. He's had very few knockouts against him in his career as a boxer. He's knocked more people out than been knocked out. That's not to say he hasn't had a concussion. I would definitely say this, though, about contact sport. It is exceptionally obvious when you notice someone isn't right. The bizarre behaviour and linked to concussion is kind of there. Mental health issues. All I've got to mention is Rick Ripon and in the ice hockey, and Wade Belak. They took their own lives. They were seen more as the enforcer, grinder type of fourth line forward who would throw the big hits and throw the punches. Both died in their 30s. Well, I think Rick Ripon died in his 20s. Both died young. Both took their lives 6 weeks apart. Derek Boogaard is another one. I'm just going to put that out there. Derek Boogaard, Rick Ripon, and Wade Belak. And I've seen Wade Belak play as well when he was playing over here for a season in the UK. Definitely showing signs of severe depression, prescription drug use, illicit drug use. All of them, those three particularly, it was well known that especially prescription misuse of drugs contributed to all three deaths. The fact that two of them decided to take their own lives rather than, seek help shows that they were self-medicating. They weren't being properly looked after. And this is where the whole CTE lawsuit and other, class action lawsuits against sports bodies and things come into play. Player welfare, athlete welfare. This has been a regular discussion on this channel for 2.5, nearly 3 years. Look, there's all sorts of things that are, Mike Tyson's behaviour. He has had some really bizarre behaviour. And again, you could put that down to concussion. Absolutely, you could. But you've got to find the link between concussion and mental health problems. You have to find that link. And until someone can categorically say there's definitely 100% a link between repeat concussions and bizarre mental health and bizarre behavioural issues, 100%. We know that frontal lobe damage to the brain can cause behavioural issues. That is known. But is it, behavioural issues linked to having multiple concussions? That's the interesting thing. Brain injuries lead to behavioural changes. Fact. Can concussion and repeat concussions and consistent damage to brain tissue lead to behavioural changes? It's strong linkage there, but it's not 100% proven. You can only diagnose CTE after you die. That's the problem. And post playing welfare or post, sporting retirement, the NHL and NFL, you play a certain amount of games, you get a pension. That's fine. Boxing, however, and this is really interesting, and this is something that people should remember. You're paid by the fight. Okay? So you get your prize money. It's up to you to look after it. Or have an accountant or a trusted advisor to look after it. You don't get a pension. You're technically self-employed. You are your pension. So the fact that so many boxers have gone bankrupt, so many, and also a high proportion of NFL players as well have gone bankrupt, more so than the NHL. The NHL has less bankruptcies than the NFL. Says to me that there's clearly an issue with how these players and boxers and athletes are guided through their careers and the advice they're given. It seems NHL players seem to be far more intelligent with their money and far better, guided with their money than NFL. CBD oil, there's a debate about it in the NHL and the NFL. Big debate because there is a known issue with players in a variety of contact sports, a lot of cocaine allegations, ironically, and players failing for drugs tests. Kuznetsov in the NHL failing at the World Championships last summer. We know of other NHL players who've had substance abuse problems, be it prescription medication, alcohol, or illicit drugs. The debate is out there for pain relief, but some people react very badly to CBD oil. I know a couple of people who've reacted very badly, been actually physically ill after taking CBD oil and other cannabinoid products. Some people react very bad mentally with cannabinoids. So again, you have to be careful. And you may not know that it may have trigger mental health issues. When people say that cannabis-based products are safe to use, and and they go, oh, they're not a gateway drug. It's a misnomer at the media. Point that it is a gateway drug. It's a soft drug. It's a nice entrance into hard drugs, and it's a slippery slope. As someone who has gone through the whole addiction thing and fought it, and now doesn't use anymore. I still smoke cigarettes, but I haven't had a cigarette whilst I've been in this live stream. I gave up on the vape. The vape thing just gave me chest infections. The debate about it and using it as pain relief for professional athletes is there. The fact that more states of the US are now legalizing completely cannabis use. The debate is there. I know Canada's legalized cannabis use. Other countries and jurisdictions are legalizing or decriminalizing the end user. I think the debate is there. I think we'll see what happens. I think the trend is now going in the direction of the war on drugs. Is now more containment than prohibition. Prohibition doesn't work. It's a known fact. It fails every time because it turns law-abiding citizens into criminals, and then it screws up the legal system. I think the debate is there. It's been had for a while now. The fact that more US jurisdictions are legalizing cannabinoids and other jurisdictions around the world are decriminalizing the end user and following the Dutch lead. The Dutch have legalized cannabis for years. Yes, now it's interesting. The flavors have been banned by the FDA in the US. Ironically, the e-cig was invented in the US. Interesting. They're going to ban menthol filter tips for rolling tobacco. So I'm going to show you. So your filter tips, they're going to ban menthol filter tips. They've already banned flavored tobacco over here in the UK. Flavored Rizzler, however, rolling papers aren't banned yet, but the menthol ones, so mint ones, are going to be banned as of May this year. The debate about should sports athletes be allowed to, snus, the Scandinavian style tobacco, chewing backy or sucking backy, whatever you want to call it, and the nicotine release. That was a debate that was being had a couple of years ago with the rise in usage because the nicotine helps with concentration. Apparently, allegedly gives an advantage to players, but plenty of players smoke. Plenty of players vape. I don't think it gives you enough of an advantage over a non-smoking player or a non-nicotine using player because you could chew nicotine gum. It's not illegal. I think that debate is a political and a sports debate. The NHL and the NFL, I think the NRL in Australia are looking at it. I think Super League's looking at it, and Rugby Union over in Europe are looking at possibly allowing it or not punishing players for using these things. The issue is we're seeing players self-medicate. We're seeing players retire young because of injury. We're seeing players take their own lives in a variety of sports. I think with what's happening in the US with the FDA and the political side of things, with raising the tobacco by purchasing. But it's only the purchasing age. And the issue is prohibition does not work. Because it just makes, now it's made everyone from the age of 18 to 21 criminals. They tried prohibition with alcohol for a while, didn't work. And yes, tobacco usage is falling worldwide. especially in the developed world, it is falling. Fine. I'm trying to quit smoking. That's why I've gone back to roll-ups. I smoke less smoking these than TaylorMades. I think going back to your debate about CBD oils and cannabinoid products and CBD pills and other bits and pieces, there's a very good debate to have. It's a positive debate to have if we have it in the right way. The pain relief side of things, it is proven to work. It's proven to be less toxic for the human body, I will admit that, but not everyone reacts in a positive way to cannabinoids. I've seen the body not react well to cannabinoids, be it mentally or physically. I've seen people be sick, and I've seen people have issues with mental health, me included. So we have to look at player welfare. And we've had a lot of questions about the NFL tonight and CTE. And I've done videos on player welfare and mental health before. They don't get the viewership I think they should. And that's not because, like, it's for some reason when you bring up the player welfare side of things and the mental health and the addiction side of things, it does work in certain circumstances. It does work in certain circumstances, but not for everyone. This is the thing. Just because it works for some people doesn't, and people go, oh, it works for depression and epilepsy and things like that. Great for those that it helps. Not so great for the ones that it makes worse. Some people do not react well to cannabinoids, and therefore you have to find a different pain relief and a different way of managing, injuries and pain. If it works for that individual, by all means, use it. And this is the debate we're having about athlete and player welfare in sport. Is okay if a player is injured and has a long-term injury or aches and pains, little niggles. No hockey player, no NFL player, no football player, soccer player, that is, rugby player, even baseball players, cricket players. No player goes into a season 100% fully fit. Jimmy Anderson is having to get another assessment on an injury he picked up in the second test match in South Africa. He keeps getting injured. So a lot of time, you look at a player. So Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain at Liverpool, he spends most of his time on the treatment table. He has done since he was at Arsenal. He's regularly injured. Player welfare and managing injuries, I think, and also looking after them and pain relief. Yeah, we can definitely debate the pros and cons of CBD or legalizing it and those players using it. Canadian players can use it. It's all cannabinoids are legal in Canada, like they are in Holland. CBD oil is legal over here, but technically cannabis isn't. So it's an interesting debating point until all cannabinoids are fully legal. Certain jurisdictions, it's still illegal. And therefore, under the WADA code, the World Anti-Doping Authority, until WADA goes right, it's no longer a prohibited substance. And until more nations go, all cannabis use, or whatever it is, be it THC or CBD or whatever, it's legalized or decriminalized, then it's still going to come up in drugs tests and players are still going to get suspended for recreational drug use. We've seen a lot of cocaine fails in rugby league, NHL, rugby union. I'm surprised the NFL hasn't had more. But other contact sports, boxing, MMA, yeah, we've seen high-profile players fail drugs tests with cocaine in their system and speed as well, and amphetamines. Now, you can get legal amphetamines, medications, and illegal amphetamines, speed, Molly. We are seeing high-profile rugby league, rugby union, ice hockey players globally failing drugs tests, not because they've got steroids in their system or performance-enhancing drugs, recreational illicits in their system. So, again, the debate's had about, player welfare, drug addiction, that kind of thing. NBA, are the Spurs fluking wins or coming to a good team? San Antonio Spurs. I don't follow the NBA religiously, but if a team has got onto a winning streak, Are they fluking or are they confident? Are they? I think it's a bit of both. There's some teams in the NHL, NFL, NBA, English football, rugby union, rugby league, who just get on a win streak. They get on a win streak and they maybe are some of all their parts. They may not be the most talented team, but they're winning, and that's the sign of a happy team. That's the sign of a team that has a good ethos. It's the sign of a team that's where the playing group really bounce off each other and are positive. So I know the NFL only do them once a year. The NHL do them twice a year, and it's a flawed system. It's once in preseason and once in regular season for the NHL, and most of it's done before Christmas. Evgeny Kuznetsov failed at the World Championships. He's been banned for 4 years. The NHL banned him for 3 games. Until sports leagues, the actual leagues, do more rigorous testing or better educational programs and pathways where if there is an issue, the player or players, they seem to throw the players under the bus as well. This is the problem. And if like you only get tested once a year, and let's say you get tested after April, let's say you get tested in June, for 12 months you ain't going to get tested again, or 9 months until April. You're not going to get tested at least till April. This is an exceptionally flawed system. The Seahawks are a playoff team. They have that pedigree. They know how to win. They've got a good, talented team. Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers, again, regularly in the playoffs. Not every season, but they have a playoff history as well. Both these teams are hungry teams, but I think the Seahawks, being more regularly in the playoffs in recent times over Green Bay, have that little bit extra experience of their whole roster being in the playoffs. I would go with the Seahawks as well, but again, I haven't really followed the NFL this season. I'm starting to fall out of love with certain sports. I'll still cover them. I'll still discuss the issues. I'll still go through the big topics and the big stories. And the histories of teams and the player stats, and we can discuss the career of Tom Brady, where if and when it's announced he's retiring or moving on from the Patriots. I think he retires. I don't think he plays for another team. I think if they're going to move on from him and say, look, we're done with the Brady era now, we're going to focus on a different quarterback or quarterbacks, then we can definitely look at Tom Brady's career and where would the Patriots be without him. Oh, look, again, if it's now a competition test and it's a recreational, you don't necessarily get banned either. I think I want the NRL back as well. I know the Super League are already in pre-season. And this is where I find that both leagues should be parallel rather than the Super League starting that little bit earlier and finishing that little bit, at a different time. We are seeing some big names come to Super League. Sonny Bill Williams, James Maloney, Gareth Widdop. They've made the crossover. I mean, Sonny Bill Williams has been out of rugby league for nearly a decade. What's his best position? Is it in the back line or as an interchange forward? I think it'd be best to have Sonny Bill as a centre. That's where he's been playing rugby union for the most part, occasionally on the wing, but mostly at centre. I think Sonny Bill Williams at centre will be a destructive wrecking ball for the Toronto Wolfpack. James Maloney and Catalan is a perfect fit. It's a rough, gnarly team that like winding up the opposition. They play a physical game in the sense that they play dirty at times. That'll suit his style of play to the ground because he likes getting in your face. He's one of those 5'8" who doesn't back off. He's an annoying little rat. He's a grub. And Gareth Widdop coming back to playing Super League for the first ever time. He's played his entire career in the NRL with the Dragons and the Storm, even though he's born in Halifax. I think that's going to be interesting. The Club World Challenge. The Roosters are going to win that. I think the NRL clubs have had the dominance over the Super League clubs for several seasons now. It's not even close. The fact that St Helens will be already into their season by about a month and it takes place in the NRL pre-season should tend to dictate that the Super League team should be up to speed, full strength squad, players that are match fit should win. They don't. 2 years ago, it was a whitewash, 3 games to 0 for the 3 English clubs playing the 3 NRL clubs. The NRL won comfortably in all 3 games. So again, this is the World Club Challenge. We have to look at this and go, why are the NRL constantly now dominating that even if it's a one-off game or a series of games where the Super League clubs play. I mean, even a couple of 2 years ago, the Super League clubs went to Australia, played the week before regular season games, so they can get used to the conditions. Okay, because it's still a lot warmer in Australia this time of year than it is over here. And the NRL clubs dominated and wiped the floor with it. I mean, the mistake rate by the English clubs was embarrassing. The fact that they were already up to speed with the regular season and they were whitewashed, it was a joke. Keeper Cronk, no, but he's played most of the last 2 seasons injured with a broken shoulder, pretty much. He played one grand final with a broken shoulder, and he hasn't been 100% for 2 years now. And the Roosters still won. I think it was more of his leadership they're going to miss, but I think the Roosters, very consistent team, still laced with superstar players. We're not sure what's going to happen with Latrell Mitchell yet, where he's going to sign, but the Roosters, I think, will have too much for St Helens. I really do. I think their forward pack is a young, exciting forward pack. I still think, as a whole, the quality level of the NRL over Super League is such that I think, I still think that the NRL team will have too much of the Super League team there. Jokes aside, the F1 have been doing air quality tests for the Melbourne Grand Prix, which is 2 months away. The air quality is not great in New South Wales, Queensland, or Victoria. South Australia and Western Australia and the Northern Territory are also reporting, and the Australian Capital Territory are also reporting, bushfires. It's not been a great year. It's not the worst year for bushfires in Australian history, but they seem to get more media attention than a few years ago. Even Tasmania's had some bushfires as well. It's really not a great summer for Australia, really. It is concerning that air quality tests have been done now by the Formula One teams and Liberty Media 2 months before the season starts. That is a concern for me. And I don't know. I really don't know. I'm concerned about what's happening with the Australian bushfires. Of course, we've got the AFL season starting soon as well. We've got the NRL season starting soon. Tennis, the Australian Open as well. And there are concerns about, will these events go ahead? Will there be, special procedures put in place? I don't know. The fact that, we've got a Raiders in the grand final. I think Canberra can feel aggrieved they didn't win that grand final. There is again, refereeing decision. We discussed this earlier on the stream. I'm a Raiders fan, so I would like to see them go to back-to-back grand finals, and I would like to see them win one. The last one they won, I think, was in '94. So they've only won it once in my lifetime. They're very good in the '80s as well. This Raiders a lot. I think Parramatta had a bounce back season and were really exciting to watch, but defensively a little bit suspect. The salary cap has had a big part to play on how all these teams have set themselves up. I think the Raiders were underdogs last season. Teams will be expecting them now. I'm not sure the Melbourne Storm how much more they got left with Cameron Smith. I really don't. The Rabbitohs, Burgess is now gone. Well, 2 of the 3 Burgesses have now gone. It's going to be an interesting one. I have heard of Christian Scotland Williams. But when the Canberra Raiders won, they were technically playing their home games in Sydney. Even though they had Canberra in the name, their home stadium was in Greater Sydney. They hadn't actually moved to Canberra at that point. So ironically, while they were the first team outside Sydney to win the grand final, they were technically playing in Sydney at the time. So interesting one there. Parramatta. I mean, I think the issue with Parramatta has been the instability of ownership and off the field issues have really derailed that club. But they've had some real great players play for them. Absolute legends of the game have played for Parramatta over the years. When it comes to other bits and pieces, the Australian Open, they are planning to play indoor games, but again, air quality. So people visiting Australia, the fact the Australian Prime Minister is under a lot of pressure as well, and has come out and stated Australia is open for investment and tourists. It's an interesting one, but okay. I'm going to start wrapping this stream up. I'll take a few more questions, and then we'll wind the stream down. So I'll take a couple more questions. It's interesting that we've ended on the NRL, which is, I think, I love the NRL. I really do. Yes, I think the last one was in 2009. I think the last grand final they were in. Nathan Hindmarsh played in that one. I wouldn't say necessarily. I think Parramatta have got problems. I think the new Bankwest Stadium is an amazing arena. It's an amazing facility, and their record there. I think they've only lost 2 games there, so they've got a good record at any stadium. I think another issue is consistency as well. They've had a real troubled off-field existence over recent years, which hasn't helped. The Jared Hayne experiment didn't work. Unsettled players. But I think right now they have got a very, very good team that can take that next step. The fact that Tim Manor has now retired is unfortunate. I think he was a good leader to have. I think I think a lot of teams struggle away from home. I think the New Zealand Warriors, the issue with them is they promise much and deliver little. I think the issue with the Warriors is they've developed some amazing players, be it Australian or Kiwi or even Pacific Islander. They've had some great players play for them, but when they get on a losing streak, they lose badly. I think was it when Sam Tompkins was playing for them. They didn't win. I think they went on a 10-game losing streak. They were terrible. But they've had some really great players, and they have got to a grand final. And I'm surprised that they've struggled as much as they have to get to finals footy and to make progress and to go on that run. I think the Warriors, they frustrate me because they have some really talented players. They do. It's just gelling that team together, and I don't know. There have been some financial issues with the Warriors. I don't know why the Warriors struggle. I really don't. I really am surprised with the Warriors' struggles at times. They've had some real great players. And yeah, we've had the debate of, the NRL having a second team in New Zealand, possibly on the South Island, or in one of the other big urban areas on the North Island, like Wellington, for example. We've had the debate about a team being in Perth. When the NRL takes games on the road, Perth sells out really well. Good numbers in Perth. But I think we'll see what happens with this coming season. We'll see what teams do well, what teams struggle. I can do my season previews or look at season predictions, looking at where teams were. I think the Gold Coast Titans are the team that I think are the weakest team. Again, it's every season this team always comes up as the weakest team out on paper out the 16. They were terrible. They were absolutely woeful last season. But some other teams also underperformed. The Broncos really underperformed. I think Dunedin could be a good location for them as well. Dunedin could be a very good location for a second team, but it's just very small. But you got to remember, Wellington's the second biggest city population in New Zealand. New Zealand doesn't have a very big population, so to have a second team, is there going to be a second team in Auckland, or do they go another city, so Christchurch or Wellington? Christchurch, the earthquake damage is still there. They're still trying to rebuild Christchurch up to where it was before the earthquakes. I think Wellington would be the best bet for a second team if you were to have one. But at the same time, is there enough fans and is there enough money? When's the NRL start? It starts in March. Pre-season starts, I think, in February, when the regular season over here starts for Super League. Which is why I'm surprised the Super League clubs struggle in the World Club Challenge. Be it if we're playing multiple clubs playing against the Australian clubs, or the one-on-one format. Now, a couple of years ago, we had the 3 English clubs playing 3 Australian clubs, and the Australian NRL teams battered the Super League teams. But we'll see what happens. I'm really looking forward to the NRL. I think Dunedin would be the best bet if you were to have a team on the South Island, but I don't think Nelson's got enough of a population either. I think it would have to be Wellington. And is Wellington a rugby league city? That's another question. Is it a rugby league city or is it a rugby union city? And that's another question you've got to have is yes, New Zealand has a very good rugby league in test side and has some really world-class players. Sonny Bill Williams is back in rugby league, but he has chosen Samoa at international level. That's interesting. It's fun to end on the NRL debate. Should there be a second team in New Zealand? Should there be a team in Perth? Should there be another team in Queensland? Do they go look at Adelaide, South Australia? Hasn't worked before. Nice to have this debate. It's nice to end on this topic. The discussion of, the NRL and Super League. I like, we started with, what did we start with? The FA being under under pressure because of them allowing betting companies to show the FA Cup games live over the last weekend. A lot of pressure there. So it's really interesting to start that debate, and it's great fun to finish on talking about the NRL and Super League and the World Club Challenge and how teams are going to do. I should get the whiteboard back out. Last season I did follow a lot of I think the first 7 rounds, and then I took a little break, and then I got back into covering the NRL again and covering some of the roundups, the table, and where teams are and what teams are struggling. Penrith and the Broncos, I did videos on them struggling, and as soon as I did those videos, they went on win streaks. So when I looked at the Penrith Panthers struggles and the Brisbane Broncos struggles, out of nowhere, both teams went on winning streaks. So there you go. But thank you very much, guys, for all your questions. I'll have some more videos for you very, very soon. I might have to do some more NRL videos and some more Super League videos because I haven't done for a while. I'll have some more videos for you soon. Thank you very, very much for watching, and goodbye for now. Good day, good night, good morning, and I'll have some more videos for you very, very soon.